Taeyang opened his eyes to a world he didn't recognize. The medical pod drained around him, the gel sliding away, leaving him standing on unsteady feet. His body felt wrong, too strong, too aware. He could feel the air moving across his skin, could hear conversations happening 3 floors above him, could sense the electromagnetic fields from every piece of equipment in the facility. "Welcome back," a voice said. An old woman stood before the pod, tears running down her weathered face. "Do you remember me?" He searched his memory, pulling up files that felt both immediate and ancient. "Yanwu, Chief Engineer, you promised you'd only wake me if there was no other choice." "I kept that promise," she said. "I'm sorry." They gave him 3 days to adjust. He spent them learning about the century he had missed. Humanity had spread across the stars, had met alien life, had built a civilization based on peace and cooperation. Everything he had fought for had come true, and now it was all about to end. A young officer named Sora was assigned as his liaison. She was 23 years old, had never seen combat, and was clearly terrified of him. He couldn't blame her. When he looked in a mirror, he barely recognized himself. His body had maintained its enhanced state perfectly, but his eyes looked ancient. "I'm not going to hurt you," he told her on their first meeting. "I know," she lied, her hand shaking slightly. "I was human once," he said. "I still am, mostly. I just have a lot of extra parts now." She tried to smile. "How does it feel?" "Being awake after so long?" "Lonely," he admitted. "Everyone I knew is dead. The world I left is gone. I'm a weapon from a war that ended before you were born." "We need you," Sora said quietly. "The swarm has already destroyed 3 alien civilizations. The Vareth, the Kellish, and the Drex, billions dead. And they're coming here." Taeyang accessed the data files, his augmented brain processing information at speeds that would crash a normal computer. He saw the tactical assessments, the projections, the desperate messages from dying worlds. The Makris swarm was unlike anything humanity had faced before. They didn't want territory or resources in the traditional sense. They wanted matter itself, breaking it down and reassembling it into more of themselves. "How long until they reach our space?" he asked. "Conservative estimates say 3 weeks. Aggressive projections say 10 days. And your military is preparing defensive positions?" "Yes. Admiral Sung-ho is coordinating the fleet deployments." Taeyang shook his head. "Defensive positions won't work. The swarm doesn't fight like we do. They don't have supply lines to cut or command structures to disrupt. They're more like a virus than an army. Then what do we do?" Before he could answer, alarms shrieked throughout the facility. Sora's communication device lit up with urgent messages. Her face went pale as she read them. "What is it?" Taeyang asked, though his enhanced hearing had already picked up fragments of the panicked transmissions. "New Sejong Colony," she whispered. "They're under attack." The swarm arrived ahead of schedule. "They're already in the system." Admiral Sung-ho's voice came through the emergency channel addressing all UEDC forces. "This is not a drill. New Sejong is under assault by hostile forces. All available units are to respond immediately. This is a Code Black scenario. I repeat, Code Black." Taeyang was already moving toward the equipment bay. "I need a ship. Something fast." "You can't go alone," Sora protested. "We should wait for the fleet to assemble." "There's no time." "How many people on New Sejong?" 800,000. "Then 800,000 people are dying right now while we wait." Director Minsu appeared on a screen. "Taeyang, we have an experimental insertion craft. It's designed for single-person rapid deployment. But it's untested and you'd be going in without support." "I've done worse," Taeyang said. "Get it ready." 10 minutes later he was in the craft, a sleek black vessel barely larger than a fighter. Sora was in the cockpit with him, her presence unauthorized but determined. "I'm your liaison," she said when he questioned her. "That means I stay with you." He didn't have time to argue. The craft launched, its experimental drive pushing them toward New Sejong at speeds that would kill a normal human. Taeyang's body adapted automatically, his augmented systems compensating for the crushing acceleration. Sora suffered, her body pressed back into the seat, but she gritted her teeth and stayed conscious. They reached New Sejong in 4 hours. What they found was hell. The swarm had deployed millions of units, each one a nightmare of biomechanical design. They looked like insects crossed with machines, all sharp angles and writhing appendages. They moved across the colony's surface like a living carpet, consuming buildings, vehicles, people. Anything organic was broken down and harvested. Anything inorganic was repurposed into more swarm units. Captain Yunji's voice came over the radio, desperate and exhausted. All defensive positions have fallen. We're conducting evacuation from the southern spaceport. Estimate 90% civilian casualties. We can't hold them. They just keep coming. This is Taiyang, he transmitted. I'm inserting at the northern sector. Draw the swarm toward my position. Who is this? Yunji demanded. I don't have you on my roster. Tell Admiral Sung Ho that Project Titan is active. He'll understand. There was a pause. Then Yunji's voice came back, tight with shock. The Titan? That's a myth. You're telling me the war god is real? I'm telling you to get your people out while I keep the swarm busy. The insertion craft dove through the chaos, dodging debris and swarm flyers. They landed hard in what used to be a residential district. Now it was a wasteland of broken buildings and organic sludge. Taiyang stepped out of the craft. Sora tried to follow, but he stopped her. Stay in the ship. Keep the engines warm. When I give the signal, you launch immediately. What signal? You'll know. He walked into the swarm alone. The first units that noticed him were scouts. Small things the size of dogs with too many legs and eyes that glowed with an unnatural light. They chittered and clicked, sending signals to the greater swarm. Within seconds, hundreds more appeared, surrounding him. Taiyang felt something he hadn't felt in a century. Not fear, purpose. He moved. To Sora, watching from the ship's cameras, it looked like a dance. Taiyang flowed through the swarm like water finding cracks in stone. His hands moved faster than the cameras could track, each strike destroying a unit with brutal efficiency. He wasn't using weapons. He didn't need them. His body was the weapon. A swarm unit lunged at him with blade-like appendages. He caught them, twisted, and used the creature's own momentum to tear it apart. Another attacked from behind. He spun, impossibly fast, and drove his fist through its central mass. Acid blood sprayed, but he was already moving, already killing the next one and the next one. The swarm adapted quickly. Larger units arrived, things the size of tanks with armored carapaces and plasma weapons. They opened fire, lighting up the battlefield with deadly energy. Taiyang dodged, his augmented reflexes calculating trajectories before the weapons even fired. He ran up the side of a ruined building, used it as a launching point, and came down on one of the heavy units like a meteor. The impact cratered the ground. The unit stopped moving, but there were always more. The swarm kept coming, endless and relentless. Taiyang fought with the efficiency of a machine and the fury of a human who had seen too much death. Minutes turned to hours. His body began to show damage, cuts and burns that would have killed a normal person. But his augmented systems kept repairing, kept him moving, kept him fighting. Commander Daewon arrived with the relief fleet and couldn't believe what he was seeing. One person, holding off millions of swarm units. One person, buying time for 800,000 civilians to evacuate. All ships, Daewon ordered, his voice filled with awe. Concentrate fire on the swarm forces around that position. Give the Titan support. The fleet opened fire, and for the first time in over a century, humanity went to war with everything it had. The Verith survivor's name was Ha-Ren, and they looked like death. Their species resembled something between a reptile and a bird, with iridescent scales and deep, intelligent eyes. Those eyes had seen horrors that no living being should witness. Ha-Ren's ship limped into human space with failing engines and a crew of 3, the last remnants of a civilization that once numbered in the billions. Dr. Hyojin brought them to the UEDC headquarters. Taiyang was there, along with Admiral Sung Ho and the military council. Ha-Ren looked at Taiyang for a long moment, their head tilting in a gesture of recognition. You are not like the others, Ha-Ren said in accented but clear human language. You are a weapon made flesh. We had warriors like you once. They died first because the swarm learned to fear them. Tell us what you know, Sung Ho said. Ha-Ren's translator device pulsed as they spoke. The swarm is ancient, older than most known civilizations. They started as a single species on a dying world. Rather than accept extinction, they merged with technology, transcended biology, became something else. They reproduce by consumption. Every atom they take becomes part of them. They have no culture, no art, no purpose except growth. We know this, Sung Ho said. What we need is their weakness. They have no weakness, Ha-Ren said flatly. We tried everything. We fought them for 3 years. We threw our entire military might at them. We developed weapons specifically designed to counter their biology. None of it mattered. They adapted faster than we could innovate. Every strategy we used, they learned. Every weapon we deployed, they countered. Tae-Yang leaned forward. But you're still alive. That means you learned something. Haren's eyes glinted. Yes, one thing. The swarm has never faced a species that fought the way you will fight. What do you mean? Every species they've encountered fought logically. They used calculated strategies, efficient tactics, predictable patterns. They fought to preserve their civilization's knowledge, their culture, their way of life. But by doing so, they were predictable. Haren pulled up a holographic display showing battle after battle, species after species falling to the swarm. They expect you to retreat when losing, to surrender when defeat is certain, to preserve your command structures and population centers. They have adapted to fight rational opponents. Haren looked directly at Tae-Yang. But you are not rational. You are human, and humans, when cornered, do not behave like other species. You're saying we should fight irrationally? Sung-Ho asked, confused. No, Tae-Yang said, understanding dawning. They're saying we should fight like humans used to fight. With everything we have. Without holding back. Without caring about what we preserve as long as we win. Exactly, Haren confirmed. The swarm has never faced a species willing to burn everything down just to survive. Your ancestors fought wars that nearly destroyed your own world. That willingness to risk everything, that capacity for total warfare, that is what might save you. The room fell silent. The implications were staggering. Dr. Hyojin spoke up, her voice shaking. There's more. I've been working on the quantum disruption problem. The swarm's communication network relies on entangled particles. We can't block the signal, but we might be able to corrupt it. Feed false information back to Nexus Prime. Make it think its fleet is somewhere it's not. A virus, Tae-Yang said. You want to infect their hive mind. More than that. I want to give it a choice. The swarm has consumed so many species, absorbed so much knowledge. What if we introduce the concept of doubt? Make it question its own purpose? That's impossible, Admiral Sung-Ho said. It's a machine intelligence. It doesn't have doubts. Neither did your ancestors' computers, Haren interjected, until they became advanced enough to simulate consciousness. The swarm has absorbed the minds of hundreds of species. All that knowledge, all those perspectives locked inside one collective intelligence. What if we unlock them? Tae-Yang understood. We don't destroy Nexus Prime. We change it. Force it to become something other than what it is. Can this work? Sung-Ho demanded. I don't know, Hyojin admitted, but it's our best chance. The alternative is fighting them head-on, and Haren is right. We'll lose that fight eventually. Then we do both, Tae-Yang said. We fight them with everything we have, buy time for the virus to work. And if it fails, we die fighting. The decision was made. Humanity mobilized for total war. In shipyards across human space, civilian vessels were converted into warships. Factories that once produced consumer goods now manufactured weapons and armor. Every able-bodied person was trained in basic combat. Not because they would all fight, but because the swarm didn't distinguish between soldier and civilian. Everyone needed to know how to survive. Tae-Yang trained specialized units called Titan Breakers, soldiers equipped with experimental gear and taught tactics specifically designed to destroy Nexus nodes. They wouldn't be as effective as him, but they could do the job. And there were thousands of them. The swarm arrived at the outer colonies first. Humanity's forces were ready. Not to win, but to bleed the enemy, to slow them down, to buy time. Colonies that couldn't be defended were evacuated and rigged with antimatter charges. When the swarm landed, entire planets exploded, taking millions of swarm units with them. It was brutal. It was wasteful. It was human. The swarm adapted, but slower than usual. Humanity's tactics were too chaotic, too desperate, too willing to sacrifice anything for even the smallest advantage. Colony after colony fell, but each one cost the swarm more than they expected. And all the while, Hyojin worked on her virus, refining it, preparing it for deployment. The final battle came when the swarm reached the Sol system. Earth itself was under threat. Every ship humanity possessed formed a defensive line. Every weapon was powered up. Every soldier stood ready. The swarm fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel like a plague. 47 million ships, each one filled with millions of units. Against them stood humanity's combined forces. 300,000 ships. It wasn't even close to a fair fight. All ships, Admiral Sung-Ho broadcast across all channels. Today we fight for our home. Not for glory, not for honor, but for survival. The swarm thinks we'll break. They think we'll retreat. Let's show them what humanity does when we're cornered. The battle began. Space lit up with weapons fire. Human ships fought with suicidal bravery, ramming swarm vessels when ammunition ran out, self-destructing in the middle of enemy formations. The Titan breakers deployed in drop pods, crashing into swarm ships to hunt nexus nodes. They died by the thousands, but they took the swarm with them. Tae Yang was at the center of it all, his single-person craft dancing through the chaos. He had uploaded Hyejin's virus into his systems. His mission was simple and impossible: reach Nexus Prime and deliver the payload. Sora was with him again, refusing to stay behind. She coordinated with the fleet, guiding Tae Yang through the battle using tactical data the other ships provided. "You're insane," she told him as they dove through a field of exploding ships. "This whole plan is insane." "That's why it might work," he replied. They fought through wave after wave of swarm defenses. Tae Yang's body was pushed beyond its limits, his augmented systems running at maximum capacity. He felt pain, real pain, for the first time in a century. But he kept going. The human fleet was being destroyed. Reports came in of ships lost, positions overrun, desperate last stands. But they held. Somehow, against impossible odds, they held. Tae Yang finally reached the swarm's core fleet. Nexus Prime was massive, a construct the size of a small moon, pulsing with stolen life and terrible intelligence. He crashed his ship into its surface and fought his way inside on foot. The interior was nightmare made real, organic walls that pulsed with borrowed heartbeats. Mechanical systems fused with flesh from 1,000 different species. And at the center, Nexus Prime itself. It was beautiful and horrible. A crystalline structure that contained the collective consciousness of the entire swarm. It spoke to him through 1,000 stolen voices. "You cannot stop us. We are inevitable. We are evolution's endpoint." "No," Tae Yang said, placing his hand on the crystal surface. "You're just hungry, and we're going to teach you something new." He uploaded the virus directly into Nexus Prime's core systems. For a moment, nothing happened. Then everything changed. The virus didn't destroy. It unlocked. Every consciousness the swarm had ever absorbed suddenly woke up inside Nexus Prime's network. Billions of minds, each one screaming for individuality, for freedom, for choice. Nexus Prime fractured, not physically but mentally. The single collective intelligence splintered into countless fragments, each one pulling in different directions. Throughout the battle, swarm units stopped moving. Ships went dark. The attack ceased. In the silence that followed, a single message broadcast from Nexus Prime to every human vessel: "We choose. Cease. Reflect. Become different." The swarm began to retreat, pulling back from human space. But they weren't fleeing. They were changing, fragmenting into smaller collectives, each one finding its own purpose beyond simple consumption. Humanity had won, not by destroying the swarm, but by forcing it to evolve beyond its purpose. The cost was staggering. Millions dead, colonies destroyed, ships lost, but Earth stood. Humanity survived. The battle for New Sejong lasted 18 hours. By the time the last swarm unit was destroyed, the colony was a graveyard. 640,000 civilians had been evacuated. 160,000 were gone, consumed by the swarm and converted into raw materials for their endless expansion. Tae Yang stood in the ruins, his body covered in wounds that were already healing. Around him, human soldiers stared in a mixture of fear and reverence. They had watched him fight, had seen him do impossible things, and now they didn't know whether to thank him or run from him. Commander Daewon approached carefully. "The evacuation is complete. Medical teams are treating the wounded. You saved a lot of people today." "Not enough," Tae Yang said quietly, looking at the wasteland around them. "I was too slow. Too late. You held off millions of them alone. No one else could have done that." Tae Yang turned to face him. "That's the problem. This colony had warning. They knew the swarm was coming. They had time to prepare, and it still wasn't enough. What happens when they hit a colony without warning? What happens when they attack multiple systems at once?" Daewon had no answer. Captain Yoonji joined them, her armor scorched and dented. She had fought at the southern spaceport, holding the line while civilians boarded evacuation ships. She looked at Tae Yang with complicated emotions in her eyes. "I heard stories about the Titan when I was a child," she said. My grandmother was alive during the war era. She said you were the reason the wars ended, the reason we got peace. I helped, Tae-yang said. But peace came because people chose it. I just removed the alternative. Can you do it again? Can you remove the swarm? He was quiet for a moment, accessing the data he had gathered during the battle. When the swarm units had tried to interface with his systems, he had reversed the connection, pulling information from them before destroying them. What he had learned was troubling. The swarm operates on a hive mind principle, he explained. Individual units have minimal intelligence, but they're all connected to nexus nodes. I found 3 nodes during the battle and destroyed them. That's why we won. Cut the connection and the units become mindless. So we target the nodes, Yoonji said. We can do that. It's not that simple. The nodes I destroyed were just local coordinators. They report to regional nexuses, which report to something bigger. I managed to trace the network before they cut me off. The swarm has a central intelligence. They call it Nexus Prime. Daewon pulled up a tactical display. Where is it? At the center of their fleet, which, according to the data I pulled, is about 47 million strong and growing. They're converting everything they consume into more units. Every planet, every ship, every person. The more they take, the stronger they become. How do we fight that? Yoonji asked, her voice hollow. We don't, Tae-yang said bluntly. Not conventionally. They've consumed hundreds of species across thousands of years. They've adapted to every weapon, every tactic, every strategy those species tried. The Verath had plasma weapons that could crack planets. The Kellish had quantum bombs that could erase matter from existence. The Drex had biological warfare that could kill 1 billion people in minutes. None of it worked. Then what's the point? A nearby soldier asked, despair in his voice. If they can't be beaten, why are we even trying? Tae-yang looked at the young soldier. Because they've never faced humanity, and they don't know what humanity is capable of when we're pushed to the edge. Admiral Sung-ho arrived with the main fleet 3 hours later. He stood on the bridge of his flagship looking at the reports from New Sejong, his face grave. The casualty numbers were terrible, but they could have been worse. Much worse. Bring him to my ship, Sung-ho ordered. We need to talk. Tae-yang stood in the Admiral's ready room, still covered in the dust and blood of battle. Sora stood beside him, having refused to leave his side since the fighting ended. 160,000 dead, Sung-ho said. And that was with warning, with evacuation procedures, with you holding the line. The swarm is going to hit 15 colonies in the next month. We can't evacuate them all. We don't have the ships or the time. No, Tae-yang agreed. You need to prepare for total war. We're not a war species anymore. We haven't fought a major conflict in over a century. Most of our soldiers have never seen combat. Our weapons are designed for peacekeeping, not this. Then you need to remember what your ancestors knew, how to fight, how to survive. Sung-ho stood and walked to the window, looking out at the fleet assembled outside. And you? Can you teach us? I can try, but I'm one person, Admiral. I can be in one place at a time. The swarm will attack everywhere at once. They'll split your forces, overwhelm your defenses, and consume everything before you can respond. So we're lost. Not yet. Tae-yang accessed the data he had stolen from the swarm network. I found something. A weakness. The swarm's coordination depends on quantum-entangled connections between the nexus nodes. It's how they communicate faster than light, how they coordinate millions of units across thousands of light years. But quantum entanglement is delicate. It can be disrupted. Sung-ho turned sharply. How? I don't know yet. That's a question for your scientists. But if we can figure it out, we can cut off Nexus Prime from its fleet. Make them fight blind. Hope flickered in the Admiral's eyes for the first time. I'll get our best people on it. What about you? I'll do what I was designed to do. Train your soldiers. Teach them how to fight an enemy that doesn't stop, doesn't negotiate, doesn't fear death. And when the time comes, I'll hit the swarm where it hurts. Over the next 2 weeks, Tae-yang became humanity's teacher of war. He trained special forces, units in anti-swarm tactics, showing them how to identify and destroy nexus nodes, how to fight efficiently against overwhelming numbers, how to survive when survival seemed impossible. The soldiers were terrified of him at first, but as they trained, they began to understand. He wasn't cruel. He was thorough. Every lesson he taught had been learned in blood, paid for with his own suffering. He showed them his scars, explained how he got each one, made them understand that survival was earned, not given. Sora watched the training sessions, seeing a side of Tai Yang that few others did. After the soldiers left, he would sit alone in the dark, processing what he had done, what he was training others to do. She found him one night, his head in his hands. "I thought I was done with this," he said quietly. "I thought I'd paid my price, earned my rest. But here I am again, teaching people how to kill." "You're teaching them how to survive," Sora corrected. "There's a difference." "Is there?" "When the swarm comes, they're going to die by the millions. Nothing I teach them will change that. All I can do is maybe help them die a little slower. You saved 600,000 people at New Sejong, and 160,000 died. I hear them, Sora. In my head. The screaming. The silence, when the screaming stops. I heard it a century ago during the wars, and now I'm hearing it again." She sat beside him, not touching, just present. "My great-grandfather fought in the colony rebellions. He came home with something he called the soldier's curse. He said the hardest part wasn't the fighting. It was living afterward, knowing what you'd done to survive. He was right. He also said that the people who bear that curse do it so others don't have to. That's what you're doing. You're carrying the weight so the rest of us can sleep at night." Taeyang looked at her, this young officer who had seen war for the first time and was somehow still optimistic. "You should be afraid of me." "I am," she admitted. "But I'm more afraid of what happens if you're not there when the swarm comes." The moment was interrupted by an urgent transmission. Dr. Hyojin's face appeared on the display, excitement and fear mixing in her expression. "We've made contact," she said. "A Verath ship escaped the destruction of their worlds. They have information about the swarm. Critical information." "Send it to me," Taeyang said. What he read changed everything. The screens in the lunar defense array flickered with an unusual pattern. Commander Daewon had been watching the deep space scanners for 6 years, and he had never seen anything like this. The signal was weak, distant, but it pulsed with desperate urgency. "Get Dr. Hyojin on the line," he said to his communications officer. "Tell her we have something from beyond our territory." Dr. Hyojin arrived at the command center within an hour, her transport ship burning hard from Earth. She was the best xenolinguist in human space, the woman who had helped establish first contact protocols with the 3 alien species humanity had met in the past century. All of those encounters had been peaceful. Humanity had left its violent past behind, or so everyone believed. She studied the signal patterns on the main display, her fingers dancing across the translation matrix. The alien language was complex, built on mathematical principles that took her system 3 hours to decode. When the translation finally appeared on screen, the room fell silent. "This is the Verath Collective to any who received this message. Our worlds are dying. An enemy we cannot fight, cannot reason with, cannot stop, has come to our space. They call themselves the Makris Swarm. They consume everything. Planets, ships, people. They turn all matter into more of themselves. We have lost 17 civilizations to them. Our fleet is broken. Our people are being harvested. This is not a request for help. It is a warning. The swarm does not stop. They will come to your worlds next. We have calculated their path. We are sending coordinates. Prepare yourselves, or die, as we have died." Daewon felt his stomach turn cold. When was this sent? Hyojin checked the data stream. 4 months ago. It traveled through 3 relay points before reaching our sensors. 4 months, Daewon repeated. "Where are they now?" The display shifted, showing a star map with a red line tracking through it. The Verath system was marked in gray, indicating dead or dying worlds. The line moved through empty space, consuming everything in its path, and it pointed directly toward the outer human colonies. Admiral Sung Ho was not a man who believed in impossible threats. He had spent 40 years in the United Earth Defense Coalition, rising through ranks during the peaceful expansion era. When He-Jin presented her findings to the military council, he listened carefully, his weathered face showing no emotion. "We have 3 options," Sung-ho said, addressing the council chamber. "We ignore the warning and hope the swarm changes course. We evacuate our outer colonies and prepare defensive positions, or we send a fleet to investigate and potentially aid any survivors." "Aid them?" One council member laughed. "We don't even know if this swarm exists. This could be a trap, a trick to draw our forces away from Earth." Hyjin stood, her voice sharp. "I have verified the signal authenticity. The Verath language patterns match our previous encounters with their trading vessels. The mathematical encoding is genuine. This is real." "Then we defend," another council member argued. "Pull our colonies back, fortify our core systems. We haven't fought a war in over a century. We're not prepared for this." The debate continued for hours. Humanity had grown soft, some said. Others argued that humanity had grown wise, learning that violence only bred more violence. The vote came down narrowly. They would prepare defensive positions but would not abandon their colonies. They would not send aid to the Verath. Earth would protect its own. Daewon watched the proceedings from the observation deck, frustration burning in his chest. He had joined the defense force to protect people, not to watch them die while politicians argued. "They're making a mistake," a voice said beside him. He turned to see an old man in a gray uniform, medals from wars long past hanging on his chest. The man's identification badge read, "Director Min-soo, Gobi Research Facility." "You think we should help them?" Daewon asked. "I think it won't matter," Min-soo said quietly. "Help them or don't. The swarm will come regardless. And when it does, humanity will need more than defensive positions and hope." "What do you mean?" Min-soo looked at him with tired eyes. "There are things about humanity's past that most people don't know. Things we built when we were desperate and dangerous. Things we locked away because we thought we'd never need them again." Before Daewon could ask more, Min-soo walked away, leaving him with more questions than answers. In the Gobi Desert, buried beneath 300 meters of sand and rock, something stirred. The facility had been silent for 94 years, its systems in minimal power mode, its single occupant frozen in medical suspension. But when the Verath signal reached Earth, when the threat assessment protocols analyzed the data, ancient programming activated. Deep in the facility's core, lights began to pulse. Warning systems that had been dark for nearly a century suddenly blazed to life. The AI system known as Aegis ran diagnostic checks on equipment that had not been touched since the last Great War. In the central chamber, a single medical pod began its warming cycle. Inside, suspended in preservation gel, floated a man. His body was wrong, too perfect, too symmetrical. His skin held a faint metallic sheen. Beneath that skin, artificial muscles woven with carbon nanofibers waited to move. His bones were reinforced with materials that didn't exist in nature. His brain was wrapped in quantum processors that could think faster than any computer. He had been human once. His name was Tae-yang. He had volunteered for Project Titan, had allowed them to remake him into something more, something terrifying. He had ended the wars that nearly destroyed humanity. He had brought peace by being so powerful that no one dared fight anymore. And then he had asked to sleep, because a weapon had no place in peacetime. The warming cycle would take 72 hours. Aegis sent an encrypted message to Director Min-soo, a message that had been programmed to send automatically if certain threat conditions were met. The message was simple. Titan protocol activated, threat assessment extinction level, recommendation, wake the warrior. Min-soo read the message in his office, his hands shaking. He had been 20 years old when they put Tae-yang to sleep. He had been there, had seen what the man could do, what he had become. He reached for his communication panel and opened a channel to the UEDC Council. "This is Director Min-soo of the Gobi facility. I request an emergency session. Classification, Level Omega. Subject, Project Titan." The silence on the other end lasted for 3 full seconds. Then Admiral Sung Ho's voice came through, barely a whisper. Project Titan is a myth. We buried those records. No, Minsu said. We buried the weapon, and now we need to dig it up. Across human space, people went about their lives unaware that everything was about to change. They had forgotten what their ancestors were capable of when survival was at stake. They had forgotten the cost of peace, the price paid by those who sacrificed their humanity so others could be human. But they would remember soon enough. The swarm was coming, and humanity's final war god was waking from his long sleep. The council chamber was empty except for 12 people. No cameras, no recording devices, no observers. What they were about to discuss had been classified beyond top secret for almost a century. Some of the council members were hearing about it for the first time. Director Minsu stood at the front of the room, a holographic display floating beside him. On it was a single image. A man floating in a medical pod, his eyes closed, his body perfect and terrible. His name was Tae Yang, Minsu began. A soldier, 26 years old when he volunteered for Project Titan. That was 123 years ago. Admiral Sung Ho leaned forward. I've heard stories, legends from the war era, but I thought they were just propaganda, stories to scare our enemies. They were real, Minsu said. Every story, every legend, and none of them captured how terrifying the truth actually was. He changed the display, showing footage from the 22nd century. Earth was burning, not from alien invasion, but from itself. The colonies had rebelled. Corporate armies fought government forces. Warlords carved up territories. Humanity was tearing itself apart, and no one could stop it. We were dying, Minsu continued, not from lack of weapons or soldiers, but from too many of them. Every faction had armies. Every corporation had fleets. The wars were endless. Someone calculated that if we continued, humanity would be extinct within 50 years. The footage changed, showing laboratories, scientists working with desperate energy. Project Titan was born from desperation. The greatest minds of the era came together with one goal: create a warrior so powerful, so unstoppable, that war would become pointless. A single human who could end any conflict before it began. One person? A council member scoffed. Against entire armies? Minsu smiled sadly. That was the reaction then, too. Until we succeeded. The display showed technical diagrams now. Biological and mechanical systems blended in ways that made several council members look away. We rebuilt him from the genetic level up, Minsu explained. Enhanced muscles that never tire. Bones stronger than starship hulls. A brain augmented with quantum processors. Reflexes measured in microseconds. He can interface with any human technology just by thinking. He processes battlefield information faster than any tactical computer. His body repairs itself from injuries that would kill a normal human instantly. That's not a human, someone whispered. That's a monster. No, said a voice from the back of the room. Everyone turned. An old woman stepped forward, her hair white, her face lined with age. She wore no uniform, but she carried herself with quiet authority. Who are you? Admiral Sung Ho demanded. My name is Yanwu. I was the chief engineer on Project Titan. I've been living in the Gobi facility for 94 years, maintaining the systems that keep Tai Yang alive. She walked to the front of the room, her eyes fixed on the image of the sleeping warrior. He's not a monster, she said softly. He's a man who gave up everything human to save humanity. Do you want to know what that cost him? She changed the display again. Now it showed footage of Tae Yang before the transformation. A young man with kind eyes laughing with friends holding hands with a woman who looked at him like he was her entire world. He had a life, Yanwu said. He had love, dreams, a future. He gave it all up. The transformation took 6 months. Every day we cut away more of what made him human. Every day he endured pain that would have killed anyone else. And he did it willingly because someone had to. The footage changed again. Now it showed Tae Yang in combat. The council members sat in stunned silence as they watched him move through a battlefield like a force of nature. He was fast, impossibly fast. Enemies fired at him, but he was never where the bullets went. He moved like water, like wind, like death itself. The first battle he fought ended in 11 minutes, Yanwu said. A corporate army, 20,000 strong with air support and artillery. He dismantled them without killing a single person. He destroyed their weapons, disabled their vehicles, and then stood in the center of their camp and asked them if they wanted to continue dying for their corporate masters. They surrendered, Minsu added, and when word spread about what he could do, others surrendered too. Not out of cowardice but out of sanity. Why fight when fighting was pointless? Admiral Sung-ho stared at the image. So he won the wars? He ended them, Yan-Wu corrected. In 3 years he brought peace to all human territory. Not through fear alone but through presence. He showed that violence had become obsolete, that humanity could be better. Then why did you put him to sleep? Yan-Wu's expression grew sad. Because he asked us to. He said that as long as he existed, humanity would see him as the solution to all problems, that we would never learn to solve conflicts ourselves. He said that a weapon has no place in peace even if the weapon thinks and feels. She touched the holographic display, her fingers passing through Taeyang's frozen face. The last thing he said to me was, "When I wake up, if I wake up, let it be because humanity truly needs me. Let it be because there's no other choice. Promise me I won't wake to a world that could have solved its problems without me." The chamber was quiet. Finally, Admiral Sung-ho spoke. The Verath signal. Aegis analyzed it and triggered the wake protocol. Yes, Minsu confirmed. The threat assessment algorithms determined that the Makris swarm represents an extinction-level event. By every calculation, humanity cannot survive this without intervention. Without him, you mean? Yes. Another council member stood. But he's been asleep for 94 years. What if he's not the same? What if the process failed? What if he's forgotten who he was? Yan-Wu turned to face them all. Those are all possibilities. The suspension technology was experimental even then. His brain has been in slow time processing, dreaming in ways we don't fully understand. He might wake up perfectly fine. He might wake up damaged. He might wake up and not remember being human at all. So we could be unleashing something we can't control, the council member said. Yes, Yan-Wu admitted, but consider the alternative. The swarm is coming. Our defense forces haven't fought a real war in over a century. We have no weapons designed for this kind of threat, no tactics, no experience. The Verath Collective was a warrior race, far more advanced than us. They had fleets that numbered in the millions, and the swarm destroyed them in months. She let that sink in before continuing. Taeyang was designed to fight the unbeatable, to win the unwinnable. If there's any chance he can help us survive, we have to take it. The vote was not unanimous. 4 council members voted against waking him. They argued it was too dangerous, too unpredictable. But 8 voted yes, including Admiral Sung-ho. May we be forgiven if this is the wrong choice, the Admiral said. Director Minsu, you have authorization to proceed with the awakening protocol. Aegis, begin the sequence. Deep in the Gobi facility, systems that had been dormant for nearly a century roared to full power. The medical pod status changed from suspended to active revival. Chemicals flooded through tubes, warming the body inside. Neural stimulators fired, gently waking a brain that had been dreaming for longer than some people had been alive. Colonel Jiwoo, the head of facility security, stood before the pod with her hand on her weapon. She didn't know if it would do any good. The file said Taeyang could dodge bullets, could move faster than human eyes could track. But she kept her hand there anyway. It made her feel better. How long? She asked. 72 hours for full revival, Yan-Wu said, checking the monitors. Then several more days for orientation and assessment. And if something goes wrong? Yan-Wu looked at the pod, at the man inside who had given up his humanity to save everyone else. Then we pray, she said quietly. We pray that after sleeping for 94 years, he still remembers what he was fighting for. Inside the pod, Taeyang's heart beat for the first time in almost a century. His eyes moved beneath closed lids. His mind, vast and strange and lonely, began to wake. And somewhere in the darkness of space, the Makris swarm moved ever closer to human territory, consuming everything in its path.